Hey everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time here, welcome. So typically when I make videos, I talk about electronic drums. Today I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk about acoustic snare drums. And, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And in most of my videos, I'm trying to pay it forward, based upon my actual experience. I've been playing acoustic drums well over 50 years, and at any one point in time, I have owned as many as 15 or 16 pretty high quality snare drums. All the usual suspects, all the major brands, a few boutique snares as well too. And I've also played a ton of snares too. But today's video is really about, it's kind of the title of, hey guys, what's the best snare drum for blah, blah, blah. And, that question pops up a lot on drum forums, and I see it quite often, and I get the spirit of it. I understand it. And one of the answers was the drum in front of you. It kind of made me stop. First it made me chuckle. Then it made me kind of stop and think and say, he's got a point. That made me really stop and think. And, then I started over time, I really started to understand that. Let me explain a couple quick things here. As far as, what you need for a great snare drum, I would say first and foremost, a lot of money is not one of them. And that is a really not hard idea to grasp, but it takes time for you to learn to get there. And, it takes a lot of experimentation, and it takes an open mind for you to think, hey, what if? Now, let me put an asterisk here and say, if you're the type of drummer that needs a lot of snare drums, keyword needs, for a variety of reasons, I totally get it. And if you are the type of drummer that wants a lot of snare drums, been there, done that. That was me. I could afford them, and I owned them, and I got great joy out of shopping for them, owning them, etc. And I would choose one, maybe two snares a week, and I would use that. But as I said, I owned a ton of snares. So the question really started to come up in my mind. Did I need those? No. Did I want them? Yes. And that's 100% fine. I'm not knocking that at all. Again, been there, done that. I'm speaking to what I'll call most of us, which is don't have a lot of money to spend, spare money, don't have a lot of room, family needs, etc., etc. And, you're just looking for the best snare drum. Out of all of my experience of different brands, different sizes, different materials, going through and understanding what does die-cast hoops do versus triple flange, what does single flange hoops do, what do the different, lug types, 6 lugs, 8 lugs, on and on and on, bearing edges, heads, top head, bottom head, combination, wires, various wires. There's so many variables out there. Most importantly, have to make sure I emphasize how you set the drum up, including making sure the wires are set up correctly, tuning it properly, and playing it so it's a musical instrument. And, I can say unequivocally, I can take a snare drum, $150, $200 snare drum, and I can make that snare drum do what I want it to do in any situation. It, depending upon the drum, I've got to, sort of caveat, put a little asterisk there again and say, sound is subjective, but I'm just talking about a good quality snare drum that whether it's an acoustic room, unmiked, or whether it's recorded, or whether it's in a live room, when you hit it, the engineer, the rest of the band actually looks at it and says, hey, it sounds great. The drums sound great, and that's I don't want to get off topic here, but I always go back to, I think I read something, I think it was Abe Laboriel, the great bass player, and somebody said, "Wow, your bass sounds great." And it was, the bass was sitting on a stand over there, and he said, "Really? How does it sound now?" And I always laugh at that, because it's not really the instrument. Yeah, the instrument, of course, sounds great. It's him. It's the player. It's how you play it. That's what sounds great. And with that, my challenge to you is, when you start to think about what's the best snare drum, what do different heads sound like? What do different wires sound like? Heads, let's say a head costs $20 each head, and they have a massive impact on that snare drum, whether you want it open or muffled or be able to do it on the fly. I tend to like my snares open, and I muffle them as needed because it's always easy to add and take away on the fly versus setting it up so it only speaks one way. Now again, if you need that type of sound, I get it. Been there, done that. But understanding what different wires do to a snare, and I've used them all. I've used 12, 16, 20s, 24, 30, 42s. I've had snare drums 10, 12, 13, and 14 inch. I've had piccolo all the way up to 6.5. Personally, I don't like anything past 6.5. I have played 8 inch. I have played 10 inch. Not for me, just not my ear. To me, if you said, "Hey, what's the best snare?" To me, my golden snare is almost anything Ludwig. First of all, I'm a Ludwig guy. But as I said, I have owned or played every major manufacturer and a whole handful of, boutique snare drums as well, too. I prefer Ludwig drums. To me, a 6.5 Black Beauty is just an absolutely gorgeous snare. That said, I'd challenge you, watch a video of the Ludwig Universal snare, and I did an A-B side-by-side comparison in a store, and unless you have some kind of really fine-tuned snare ear, I challenge you, if you were blindfolded, I bet you can't tell the difference. And the cost difference is something like $400, $500 between the two. Now, that being said, when you spend the money for a great snare, there are certain things about it, the way it stays in tune, the build quality, the materials. But if you know what you're doing and you have the time and willingness to experiment, the snare drum in front of you just might be the best snare you can possibly play at that point. So I don't want to make this video too long. There's a ton of videos on YouTube comparing different snare drums, different heads. But one thing I would say to you is when you're watching those videos, don't watch them. You should be shopping, online and in person. Shop with your eyes last. It's always easy to walk in and go, "Oh, that's the snare I want." Been there, done that. But it's really something, and it's really an eye-opener, no pun intended, to buy the snare with your ears and your hands. How does it sound? How does it feel? All of it. Is it articulate? Does it give me the bang I want, the crack that I want? Is there body to it? Is there a ring to it? Do I like the ring? Can I control it? How much volume is this thing putting out? Can I control that? Another tip I would say to you is, when I do go snare shopping or have been, I'll have somebody in the shop play the drum, and I'll stand 5 feet away, 10 feet away. I want to hear the snare being played. I also want to hear being played by somebody else because they have a whole different touch and feel. And I'll tell you, it's a real eye-opener to actually hear somebody hitting that snare. Other things to think about is, does that snare ever choke out? If you hit it lightly and it has a wonderful warm sound, but if you hit it and you really hit that thing, or you hit a rim shot, are you still getting the great articulation and crack and body that you want at all volumes? Or at some point, does it just peak out and just start to choke? Again, that could be the combination of how it's set up, what type of wires are on it. Not all wires fit all snares. Some snares have snare beds, specifically cut for a certain size wire. And the variations of wires is pretty great out there. Pure sound wires, I think, typically cost about $20. Think about that. You can put a new batter head and a new set of wires for $40. Far better than spending maybe the $900 you really don't have to take that snare drum that you thought is a horrible snare and turn it into something. I absolutely remember one snare in particular. It was a Mapex maple snare, really nice snare. I think it's like a 6-inch. And I played it, and I heard it played by others, and I always thought to myself, ooh, I hate that snare drum. Matter of fact, I used to always bring one of my snares there was a church campus, and I remember bringing my snare because I hated that snare. Then one day, the main drummer there said, hey, can we, retune the drums, put new heads on it, etc. And we worked on that snare together. And I got to tell you, that snare went from being, I can't stand it, to one of my favorites. And again, it's these little things like that, the eye opener. And to this day, I look forward to actually playing that snare. I think it sounds fantastic. The heads that we chose, the tuning that we chose, a little bit of muffling, the wires, the tension, etc. So the drum is just, it speaks at all volumes, etc. Anyway, again, I don't want to make this video too long. I could go on and on and on and on about snares. I'm hoping that videos like this help you in your own drumming journey. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll do my best to get back to you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.